Imagine surviving the Black Plague in Europe when you hear about a young woman who is really starting to make a name for herself. Rumors say that she's unbelievably generous and very kind, and also adept in negotiating peace among city-states, as well as being pretty close with the Pope. As luck would have it, you happen to be in Florence the same time she's arranging some peace agreements, and you realize that all of the rumors are true, and then some. The world changes everywhere she goes. What kind of an impact will she leave behind? Howdy, y'all, and welcome back to another episode of the Sanctified Podcast, the show where we explore the stories of various saints throughout history, learn about what they did, and how we came to recognize them as saints today. Today, we're going to explore the life of Saint Catherine of Siena, a remarkable woman who shaped the church as we know it today. Catherine was born in Siena, Italy, on March 25th, 1347, which just so happened to be right at the start of the Black Plague, which was ravaging Europe at the time. Her father, Jacopo di Benincasa, worked hard as a cloth dyer to take care of the family, and her mother, Lapa Piacenti, worked very hard to raise the children. Catherine was born with a twin sister, but unfortunately, her twin did not survive infancy. In fact, many of her siblings didn't survive childhood. She was actually the 23rd child, and only about half of her siblings survived. 20 plus kids is like a small village in a home, though I can't imagine how hard it was on her parents to go through losing so many of their children. But growing up, Catherine proved to brighten the family's lives every day. They even started calling her Euphrosyne, which means joy in Greek. So, they all loved each other very much. And perhaps it was just proof of how joyful and pure Catherine was, but she received her first visions of Jesus when she was just about 5 years old. She was with one of her brothers coming home from a visit with an older sister who was married when Jesus and the apostles Peter, Paul, and John appeared before her. It was at that moment that Catherine vowed to devote her life to God, which, for 5 years old, it's a pretty big commitment. To be fair, it is a big commitment, regardless of your age, to devote your life wholly to God, but for 5 years old, it's exceptionally impressive. When Catherine was 16, her sister, Bonaventura, died while giving birth. It's not clear if this is the same sister that she had visited before her first vision, because Bonaventura had been married, but she had other siblings, so it could have very well have been another sibling. But after her death, Catherine's parents suggested that she, Catherine, marry her sister's husband so that he wouldn't stay a widower. Catherine wanted nothing to do with that, though. So she cut her hair a lot shorter so that she would appear less attractive, and she would fast and pray to not have to get married. Her parents were kind of pushy at first. They wanted her to marry him, but eventually they did relent after seeing just how devoted she was to her fasting, prayer, family, and faith. She essentially built an ascetic cell in her home, trying to live solely in her room to surround herself in prayer, leaving only if necessary or to help others. And she also served her family, imagining as if they were representatives from heaven, kind of like how St. Alphonsus Rodriguez would imagine anyone coming to his door was sent from God. With her level of devotion, you might think she kind of would want to join a convent. It just makes sense. But she actually didn't. She wanted to stay with her family to help them, but she wanted a life devoted. So she found the best of both worlds and joined the Third Order of St. Dominic. And her family really appreciated this effort, for a little while at least. The Sisters of the Order taught Catherine how to read and how to live a more devoted lifestyle, and Catherine really felt drawn to charitable giving in particular. Eventually, she even gave away some of her family's food and clothing, which they weren't too thrilled about. But she put up with their complaints, knowing that she did the right thing. She continued fasting for longer and longer periods, as long as her body would let her. She didn't want the food put before her from her family. She wanted the food from the table awaiting her in heaven. When Catherine turned 21, she felt a change. She would later describe it as a mystical marriage to Christ, and she even said that she had a ring from him, though it wasn't visible, which I don't think really discounts her claim necessarily, because we believe in things that we can't see. We know they are true, but just because we can't see them doesn't mean we shouldn't believe it. The ring may not be there visibly, but she knows it to be true, that it's still present, and her devotion was as strong as ever. She also received vision telling her to return to public life and help those in need. So she did just that. She frequently visited hospitals and homes of the sick, as well as visiting the poor of Siena. Her devotion to help and follow her faith was inspirational, and people started following her in her footsteps. As time went on, her help started to spread beyond Siena. She worked at the hospital of Santa Maria della Scala, and she became known as Santa Donna, or Holy Woman. Her desire to help people spread beyond the confines of the hospital, and soon she found herself involved in politics to make a lasting change for everyone. She traveled further and further. Her first travel was to Florence in 1374, though it's a little unclear what exactly her reason for that was. Some suggest that it was because officials in her order wanted to confirm her as legitimate, essentially, because she was making all these claims of visions and everything, and some people kind of just want to be like, you telling the truth? And the lack of evidence suggests that if this was the reason, they must have decided she was telling the truth. Otherwise, they would record that she was a fraud, right? So the officials gave her the go-ahead. She also began to call for a reform of the church, for people to confess and love God wholly. She traveled to Pisa in 1375 with a group of others to talk to the locals. She successfully convinced them to not join an alliance with an anti-papal group that was growing nearby. She even is given credit to starting a crusade to the Holy Land around this time. Catherine Gifts just kept giving. She visited a political prisoner who was sure to die, and as she spoke with him, you could tell that his soul was saved. He was a different person after she left. And at his death, she saw him being taken up to heaven. Also, she suffered from the stigmata, which are injuries on your hands or feet or head, just like Jesus had when he was crucified. Though records again suggest that, by her request, these were visible only to her, just like the ring. And again, she very well could have been feeling the pain in her hands and feet as though they were pierced by a nail, without actually bleeding before everybody. Think about like a muscle injury. You can't see it, but you know that it hurts and that there's something really wrong. In 1375, she began dictating letters. She would petition for peace and was critical in convincing the Pope to return to Rome from Avignon. She played a crucial part in helping resolve conflicts in the city-states of Italy and keep any all-out wars at bay. She even had consistent communication with Pope Gregory XI, which makes sense. That's why she was trying to bring him back to Rome. And one of her most frequent requests was for the reformation of the clergy and administration of the papal states. She didn't like the road that it was heading down. Over the next couple of years, she worked with Florence as an ambassador, trying to keep the peace among the papal states. And on top of that work, she was successful in convincing Pope Gregory XI to return to Rome in 1377, though some argue there's other reasons to it. I tend to think she played a pretty big role. Also in 1377, she founded her own monastery for women just outside of Siena. Then, she went on a local mission to Rocca d'Orcia, about 20 miles away, to help maintain the peace. And while there, Pope Gregory XI asked her to go back to Florence and attempt to broker peace between there and Rome, because conflict was kind of rising up. But then, in 1378, the Pope died, and riots erupted everywhere. During this, Catherine was almost assassinated. Lucky for us, she wasn't. By July, she managed to get Florence and Rome to agree to peace. But then, in November, the Western Schism started, and the new Pope Urban VI asked her to come to Rome. He requested her help in convincing other leaders in the church that he legitimately earned that position and help in avoiding the Western Schism. Then in early 1380, Catherine became very sick, even though she was just 33. Some think it had to do with her extreme fasts, relying solely on receiving the Eucharist daily to sustain her. Her confessor, Blessed Raymond of Capua, even told her to eat more, but she said it was just too hard to. In January, she could hardly eat or drink without feeling severe discomfort, and then on February 26th, she lost the use of her legs. In April, she had a stroke, and on April 29th, she passed away. Her last words were, "Father, into your hands I commend my soul and my spirit." By the time of her death, she had over 400 letters composed, many prayers, and her dialogue, which details her conversations with God and is regarded as one of the greatest examples of such a type of record. All combined, these would help her become a doctor of the church, She and Teresa of Avila were the first two women granted this honor. There were also many miracles reported at her grave, and it kind of became too much. So they exhumed her body and relocated it inside the Santa Maria sopra Minerva in Rome. Her head was actually separated from her body by a group of people from Siena who wanted her body back in Siena. They felt she would want to be buried in her home, but Rome wasn't just going to give her holy body away, so they went and took her head, because just the head was a lot easier to smuggle than her whole body. But it wasn't going to be easy smuggling it back to Siena. They put it in a bag and they started traveling, but were stopped by some Roman guards who demanded to see what was in the bag. The group prayed, and when the Romans opened the bag, nothing but rose petals were present. When they returned to Siena, it was back to being her head. And now it resides in the Basilica of San Domenico in Siena, in a chapel devoted to Catherine. Catherine was canonized by Pope Pius II on June 29th, 1461. Her feast day is April 29th, and she is the patron saint against fire, illness, miscarriages, those ridiculed for their faith, temptation, nurses, as well as for Rome, Italy, Europe, and the United States. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them. So what do you think of Saint Catherine of Siena? What about all the peace brokering and the progress that she made in shaping the church? I hope you found her story interesting, and I look forward to hearing about your thoughts on Saint Catherine of Siena. Thanks for listening. And also, a special thank you to Carolyn for suggesting that I look into this incredible saint. If you'd like to support the channel, you can subscribe, download the episode, like, comment, share with your friends, or send me a suggestion on a saint to check out by emailing me at sanctifiedpodcast@proton.me. You can find the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Podbean, and more. I upload every Thursday. Take care, and have a wonderful day.